Okay, so this is the second video to get you used to using SketchUp. Now I've got two things I've pre-created on here. The first one is this 3D shape, 3D object. All I've done is I've created a rectangle on the base, I've dragged it up using the push-pull, I've created another rectangle on the side, and I've used the push-pull to drag it out. Now if you're not sure how to do that, you need to stop, ask for help before you go any further, because this should be fairly basic for you to be able to do by now. So if you're not sure, go back to the first video, watch it again, practice the things that I'm showing you on there. Now the second thing that I've created is this shape. To point out that it's not filled with a grey colour is important, because it means that there's something wrong with this shape. So when you're trying to create a flat shape of any sort of orientation, any size, any amount of sides on it, SketchUp will try to fill it with a solid grey colour or white, like white or grey colour, to show you that it's recognised it as being a solid sealed shape. So that's our first little cue here that there's something wrong with this one. The second thing is that looking at it from only one perspective, it's hard to know exactly what sort of shape it is. It could be a rectangle where it's getting smaller in the distance because of perspective. It could be a trapezium shape and we're facing it directly on. But as soon as we use the orbit tool by pressing down the middle mouse button, look up here, you can see that it is not the shape that it initially appears. Alright, so this distance over here travels much further than this one, but when we're looking at it from this angle, you can't tell. Alright, the other thing is if I go over to the side here and look flat down the bottom, you can see that it's not flat. Alright, it's angling down. So this point over on this side is not only further away than this point here, it's also further down. So it means that because it's not a flat shape, it cannot seal it off as being a solid. There is one easy solution for this, and that is to use our pen tool to go from that corner to this corner, and it will treat it as being two separate solid shapes, which are triangles. Triangles are really important when it comes to 3D modeling. They allow you to create what can be quite complex rounded edges by using a lot of triangles. So sometimes you'll see that in 3D games, especially if your graphics are not really high end on your computer. Sometimes it'll have to simplify it down and you'll see lots of those triangular shapes in the 3D objects that your game is trying to display. Alright, now if I was to try and make this one three-dimensional using my push-pull, I can do it pretty easily, but because this one is angling up a little bit, it means that when I use the push-pull, it's going to cut through, and that's not ideal. Sometimes there'll be situations where it's good to do it, but for this, not ideal. It's not really what I was looking for. Alright, so if I really wanted to have a shape that looked more like a rectangle or a trapezium, I'd probably start again. And the easiest way to do it, guaranteeing that you're not going to have weird things going in the distance, is to start off with a rectangle. So I'm going to try and do a trapezium for this one. Alright, I've got my rectangle, it's flat, and then I could use my pen tool, and I'm going to do some construction lines here. I do one straight across the top, I do one from here, so on the edge to the end point, another one on the edge to the end point, and then I could go through and delete all these extra bits that I don't want. Now you could use, I'm selecting them and then pressing the delete key on my keyboard. Alright, so when you select things turn blue. You could use the eraser tool, which is up here, and that'll allow you just to click and things will disappear. But I tend to like using the selection tool, the arrow, and make sure that I'm selecting the right thing I want to delete, and then I press delete. And of course, if you accidentally delete the wrong thing, you can always use Control Z, and that will undo and get you back there. So the difference between the first shape I had and this one is that it's solid, it's filled with a color, and if I look at it, it's flat. If I look at it from this side, it's flat. Alright, and it means that when I use my push-pull, it will drag it up, and it will be a solid shape, which is what I was initially intending. Alright, so the second thing in this video I wanted to show you, I'm going to drag up here, change my perspective, is how to get a simple floor plan of a house built. Now we'll keep it really, really simple, so I'm just going to start off with a rectangle shape. Now, what a lot of people do when they first start modeling in SketchUp is they will try to do their walls. So if I change my angle down and I build this as a wall, and I'll move over here a little bit, I'll go from that point down to here, it'll snap. Now, they look like walls, but the issue is they're paper thin. There's no thickness to them. So there's a nice easy solution for this. So I'm going to undo those two walls I've created using Control Z. And I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to go around the edges. And again, this is going to be pretty quick and rough, but you'll get the idea of what I'm doing soon, where I am essentially modeling my rooms by going around and drawing the walls in one go. Alright, so this is going to be a very, very simple house, almost like a shed. I go to the end here. Now, if I go to my arrow tool, I can select just the inside and I can select the walls. So I've actually created the walls as if they're a complex shape. And what it means now is I can use my push-pull and I can drag that whole thing up. Alright, so straight away I've got a house or a shed or a basic sort of structure, but the walls aren't paper thin, which is what I'm looking for. Now I'm going to undo that, because the other thing I want to remind you about is if I click once and let go of my mouse when I'm using the push-pull, and then I start, oops, I stuffed that one up there a little bit. If I click once and let go, and then I move up in the air, now a standard height for walls is about 2.4. So I've gone in the direction I want. Now if I type 2.4, and you can see that that is down that bottom right corner, there's 2.4 next to the distance. If I press enter, it will then make those exactly 2.4 high. And I can check that by using my measuring tool. So I can go to any of the corners, go to the endpoint, drag all the way down to the other endpoint, and it says 2.4. So I know that that is exactly 2.4 meters high. Okay, so that's a measurement we'll use typically for our final assessment task for this unit. All right, so I've gone through, I've done that. Now, the next thing which confuses some people is how do you do a window? Because if I put a rectangle here, if I want a big window, and then I look on the other side, because it's technically two rectangles that make up this wall, what I draw on one side doesn't go through to the other side, and it can be hard to sort of guess to make sure they line up, because you need it to be exact, it needs to be accurate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to zoom back out for a little bit so we can see the blue, the green and the red axes. Now what's important is to note which axis is going to line up with me doing lines going out in this direction. So if I look back here, you can see that it's red. So I want lines that are going to go straight out the side, and I want them to be parallel to this red axis. So I'm going to zoom back in, I go to this endpoint, and I'm going to draw a line, and as long as it's red, it's good. If it goes off black, or if it turns blue like it is now, it's going straight in the air, I definitely don't want it to be green because it's going out the wrong direction entirely. So red is where I want, I click, it's done a line, and the pen tool always wants to keep on drawing line after line. So you can press escape, it stops that, but it's still got the pen tool selected. So I'm going to go to every corner, do a line that's going out, and if you get too close, so sometimes if it lines up like that, that's fine. If they go like that, that's not good. Okay, so the line has to be red. That's red, so all good. And the last one, I could do it out as far as I wanted. It makes no difference as long as it's red. So when I change my angle that I'm looking at, you can see that I've now got 4 points coming out of that wall, which are going to line up perfectly with the rectangle I did on the inside. And this is where you'll see another type of snapping tool. So before, where we've had the blue, we've had the red, we've had the green, and we've had the light blue for the midpoint, now it comes up with a red cross and it says intersection. And that's where a line comes through a solid surface like this rectangle you're looking at right now. So if I click on that, I go down to the other one. All right, and I've now got my two rectangles lined up perfectly with each other. Now these lines that I drew, I can now select them and I can delete them. And it's not deleting all of the line, it's deleting the line only that's coming out through the wall here. So there's a funny thing with lines, so I'll show you now. If I draw one and I use my pen or my selection tool, it selects the whole thing. But as soon as I draw another line that touches that line, and then I use my selection tool, if I can get the right thing selected there, it'll treat those lines, those ends of the line, as being completely separate things. And that's what's going to happen here. I'm deleting the outside, but the inside bit of the line between this rectangle and this rectangle still exists. We just can't see it at the moment. So I'm going to get rid of that. I'll get rid of these lines I've done over here, all right, using just a selection box. I can delete the whole lot together. And now I'm going to select this rectangle and delete it. All right, so what that's done now is I've still got the bit of the line left in there, and that allows these to then be solid rectangles, which makes it look like a window frame. If I didn't have those lines there, So I will delete one of them. Then you get this occurring, and it makes it look not real. All right, so it stuffs it up a little bit. And this is where we need to remember that everything is hollow. So by leaving that line there, it gives it at least the appearance that it's not hollow. All right, and the last thing we need to do is to put on a material which is actually going to look like a window. So I select the materials bucket, and I'll change to translucent and change that to a glass. And so then I can click on here, and if I look through the other side, you can see it's a little bit blue, a little bit light, but you can see through it. So it's trying to give that appearance of it actually being glass. All right, so that's enough for this tutorial. If you practice those, so make sure you're comfortable with essentially creating these sort of shapes here. All right, that this is pretty straightforward for you to build. Making sure that you can create more or a variety of shapes, more complex shapes by starting off with a flat rectangle is really useful. I'll get rid of this material. And also that you can do this basic sort of design of a house, including the window. All right, and this is really important for the next task you're going to be working on. Okay, so we'll stop here and we'll resume from this document in the next video. Okay, so I'll see you there.